talking about relationships, what are some of the biggest misconceptions men have about what women actually want in a relationship or in a partner?
You know, I can't speak for men, obviously, because I'm not one.
Right.
But I will say this, I know that, the most important thing for a woman is safety, and not just physical. Like, obviously, you want to know that the person you're with is capable of protecting you physically. I think that's really important too, whether we realize it or not. But emotional, mental safety, knowing that that person women are more emotional. Women are more nurturing, empathetic. That's just who they are by nature for the most part. And if you aren't with someone who is pretty stable, mentally and emotionally, that can't hold space for your emotions and the wave of things that you feel, you don't feel safe with them. Like if I for example, like, I know a lot of men are kinda just like, "Ooh," when it comes to a women's emotions, right? They're just kinda like, "Ooh, I don't like this. This feels weird."
Yeah, I think I mean, men just have a hard time expressing their
Well,
emotions.
just
Yeah.
because we're taught from a young age that we're not supposed to have emotions.
Mhm.
That's a problem.
It is 100% a
Huge
problem,
problem.
especially for mental health with men, I've
Yeah,
noticed too,
absolutely.
but women, if you're like if there's a wall up every time she's crying, if there's a wall up every time she's like, "Man, I'm just struggling right now, and I don't know what to do," and you're just kinda like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with that either." She doesn't feel safe. She can't fully submit to a relationship with a man until she's like, "He's got me," in every sense of the way. Like, when you can say, "Maybe you don't need a solution right now, but I hear you, I get it." Like, just creating that safe space for a woman to be a woman, I think is really important, and I don't know if that's talked about enough, you know?
And do you think it's just as simple as just listening, just sitting there and giving them a sounding board to just talk to? Because men, you know, we want to fix things. We want to find a solution for things. That's where our mind and head goes. But I know that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is just listening
Mhm.
and not trying. Don't even have to say anything.
Mhm.
Just sit there and let them talk. Is that
Man, that sucks. I'll say shit like that all the
yeah?
time. I've realized instead of like I've noticed with my wife specifically, like, the second I try to start coming up with solutions for the problem, it like doesn't seem to help at all. But if I
Yeah.
just sit there and listen and man, that sucks.
Yeah.
Oh God, I would hate that. And you just kind of like agree with her and you think about, you try to kind of put yourself in and see how you would feel in that situation instead of like trying to be the problem solver. That seems to be at least I get better reactions from her that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
uh,
women don't want solutions, they want affirmation and encouragement, you know? They want you to be like, "Yep, I would feel the same way, but you're doing great."
she really is a bitch.
Yes, she is, and you're amazing, though, so don't let her talk to you like that, you do that and a woman's gonna be in love with you for the rest of her life, like, that's what they need, and I think that's great, and I think that it helps too when men can allow themselves to open up a little bit too, though. Like,
Yeah.
you connect more, and that makes a woman feel safe. If she can give you her stuff and you can give her yours and trust her with yours, that creates such a beautiful environment of safety, I think, in a relationship.
So,
So
guys, hear that? It's that simple. Listen and be vulnerable.
and it's hard. I know it's so
tough.
hard
Yeah.
to open up. And even good men struggle with that.
Oh,
Like,
for
it's not
sure.
about like, you don't have to be toxic to be like, I'm never giving you any of my problems. But even good men, struggle to open up and be vulnerable because they think that somehow that makes them weak or like less of a leader or, less of the lead of the house. But that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Like,
I, I, I mean, things that I've discovered about myself through therapy, it wasn't so much that I felt weak. It was just not wanting to feel like a burden.
mhm.
I think that's more of it. Like, hey, my problems are my problems, and I don't want to push those off onto you and burden you with those problems. I can shoulder this and I can solve this on my own. So I don't want to take my problems to you. You have enough going on in your life and things that you're dealing with that it does. It makes it hard because I mean, like you said, women tend to be more emotional than men, and more times than not, women are wanting to come to their partner with their problems. That it's just like, well, now I feel like an asshole for trying to bring up my problem. I'm not, you know what? You've got enough on your plate. I'm not going to put that burden on you. And so that's where I failed.
Mhm.
And that's things that I'm still learning through with dating and things like that. Like, yeah, they may be going through their own things, but it's okay to share like at times where even so, like there's times where I still keep things to myself and I'll save it for another day when I know that if they're going through something. But that's been that I feel, and a lot of guys that I've talked to have felt the same way. That's like, I just don't want to be a burden.
I know.
So-
I've actually got a guy friend this week, just the last 2 weeks, he's been kind of going through it. And I've been like, hey, like I'm here, like I'll support you. I want to encourage you. And here's what happens when you don't open that space for them, which you don't have to. If that's like something you just can't do, that's okay. Like no one should be forcing you to give you their problems. But I feel like in that person's life, I kind of feel like I've been blocked out. Like I feel like I want to help you. I wouldn't offer it if I couldn't. If I didn't have the space for it, I wouldn't. But a woman feels like you don't want to be close to her when you don't allow her to be there for you too. You know, and then that can kind of push her away a little bit, whether it's in friendship or otherwise, you know, because that's what connects us is the things that we're struggling with, you know?
And I thought, yeah, I mean, do you follow Chris Williamson's podcast?
I do
Modern
actually.
Wisdom?
Yeah.
So he just had a guy on that runs this ranch, and I mean, unbelievable quote that he put out there about men and manhood, about how, I mean, men have 100 different problems going on at any given time, but they're not willing to open up and share that with you because, again, the burden and things like that. But it was really powerful. It was really like getting into the mindset of a man and understanding like, hey, yeah, there's a lot going on in our lives. It's just, again, not wanting to put that burden on you and that we can handle it, because there are times like, hey, we do it, and you get that whole, even from partners, and I've had it, and it's like, oh, suck it up, buttercup. Like, well, no, that's just something that's bothering me, and you're going to shut down that emotion and that feeling that I have that it makes me not want to share anymore. And it's just, it's just kind of that.
Again, that's not you, though.
No, right. That's the partner.
That's the immaturity of them, or the unhealed part of them that can't hold space for that, which is also like something to consider.
Right. Oh, it's a big red flag.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, that's been one of my, like, with dating, that's been one of the things is like, I'm trying to be more vulnerable in those moments. But at the same time, it's like, let's ease into that and kind of see where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So to hold the space, see if they can hold that space for me. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I hear that.
It's tough. There's a lot of give and take.
Healing and healthy people, though, can. And I think, I don't think you should just break up with anybody because they're not really good at that. I mean, but are they aware of it? Is it something they're working on? Because that's really what matters.
Exactly.
Well, like going back to your first, kind of serious relationship that was clearly pretty toxic, what, if you could go back and give you 15 when you started dating this guy, if you could go back to and talk to your 15-year-old self, what advice would you give her?
Oh, God. Ooh, that's tough. I would tell her that just because something looks really great doesn't mean it is, and to trust herself and to know her worth and to not settle for anything that doesn't make her feel like the best version of herself. For sure.
So you have a daughter?
I do.
Yeah.
She's 10.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You guys have kids?
Yes.
I know you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have two.
Also boys.
Yeah, we both have
two boys.
2 boys each.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you have a daughter. What's how do you expect to raise her and kind of show her kind of what love is? So
I'm not a perfect parent. I don't think any of us are, but for me, I've actually learned, this is what I've learned through parenting. Well, one, it makes you so patient because you have no other choice.
Yeah.
But I think example is, she doesn't listen to what I say, but she watches what I do. That's for sure. And sometimes I doubt myself as a parent, and I think I'm not doing a great job, but then I will see a teacher that she has, and she's the most empathetic, kind little girl in our class. And then I'm going, okay, I am doing something right.
Yeah.
And it reminds me too that who you are has a bigger impact on them than what you tell them or who you think they should be. My dad, I love my dad very much, and my mom, but they both had very specific ideas of who they thought I should be growing up. And so it's been really hard for them, not anymore, but for a long time, it was very hard for them to just kind of let me pave my own path.
What did they expect of you?
Well, my dad really wanted me to be into sports and things like that growing up, which I sucked at. I tried out for everything because that's what he wanted me to do. It didn't make anything except for track because there are no their tryouts for track. You're just in.
Everybody makes it.
You're just in. And the coach wasn't happy that I was in, I'll tell you that. But I was a singer. I was very creative, artsy, and that was kind of what I wanted to be. But my dad struggled. He was like, no, you need to be in volleyball. You need to try out for the cheerleading team. You need to do all these things, which I'm sure his intentions were good, just to kind of keep me involved in something. And my mom wanted me to be a worship leader, for my entire life, because she was one, and then she didn't fulfill that all the way. So there was this part of her that needed me to do it, to kind of pass the torch. And I did it. I did do it, but it didn't fulfill me. Anyway, long story short, getting back to the point is, like, I think that just being fully who you are has a great impact on your kids, because then it gives them the space to figure out who they are, but also see the things in you that they admire and take that, instead of you just telling them exactly, who they have to be or what they have to do and all of that.
Now, do you think your views on what, or like where your parents were wanting you to be, had some sort of effect into the choosing of the toxic trait and like things and like that moving forward into relationships, like, hey, and or not seeing yourself as worthy because you've got your parents that are putting these pressures on you to be certain people and you're not? And because I mean,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I never really thought about, but you're absolutely right, because I never felt like who I was good enough. Like, it was always like, I have to be something different than what I am, because who I am doesn't seem to be accepted very well. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know I go through with stuff with my parents and the way I was raised. So that's actually like one of the biggest topics of therapy for me is
really
the parent side of things, and like
really
certain things that they said or did or didn't do, that kind of, and how they raised me kind of led into who I am and my thinking on things and where I'm at, and breaking through those I mean, it took a long time, and now, I mean, I notice these things now with my parents. I notice when they're doing certain things that are triggers, and it's honestly, it's really, that's been one of the other bigger things that has kind of helped me through, is like, yeah, first and foremost, admitting where I fucked up, but then looking back at my past and learning why I fucked up, because that's where it stemmed from, was just relationships with my parents and how that all shaped me into who I am. And that was a big turning point for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're finally becoming that person now, the person that you really feel is true to who you are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we always want, like, I was just on a podcast last week, and we were talking about fatherhood and all that. And, or just in parenthood in general, we want our kids to be better than us. Like, that's ultimately what we want. And, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, because I'll start crying when I talk about my kids. I always start crying. Ask Zach.
Pat cries a lot.
I'm a
Listen, this is a safe space.
I'm a crier. If you want to see me, just go watch that podcast from last week. You'll see me tear up.
I love a good cry.
So yeah, no, it's but no, I like I said, it's I want, and ultimately it's just learning. My dad didn't have a dad growing up, so it's like, hey, he doesn't have a father figure to know how to be a father. Like learning about my mom's past and just accepting, like, hey, you know what? They loved me the best way that they knew how, based off their experiences. And so for me, being a dad, like, I'm going to love my kids the best way that I know how to love them and give them that opportunity. But I want them to be better than what I was. And it's nice being able to look back and be like, all right, I'm not going to do this like my parents did, and I'm going to do my own thing. And that's been a big thing especially when it comes to parenting.
You know what they call that, right?
What?
It means you're the chain breaker in your family.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're doing something different than what everyone else did.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Absolutely. Is that so? Is that kind of what you're thinking too, in terms of how you're raising your daughter? Are you wanting to be that chain breaker? You're not going to put those pressures in sports or being in church and being a worship leader. You're going to let her do her thing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I want to be a chain breaker in every area of my life, because, we all come from trauma. It's just life. Right. But I've seen the patterns that, like, even the patterns I'm breaking in relationships, I've seen it in all the women in my family on both sides. I've seen it in the men, wildly enough, there were a lot of abusers on my dad's side of the family. They were not necessarily great men, all of them. And And so I want to break all of those chains for my daughter and the children that she has, and, on and on. I don't want those issues to exist anymore. I don't want women in my family that get into abusive relationships or think they're okay or don't think they have worth. I don't want that ever again for anyone,
Well, if you had to create a red flag list for like young women out there, like looking to get into a relationship with a good guy, or or I shouldn't say a good, if you're creating a red flag list for young women
Red
out there,
flag, green flag.
yeah, like what would be some red flags that you'd say, like, run, ladies?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, if you're not healing, don't date. First of all, if you're not actively working on yourself, don't date because you're not ready. It's not a good time to do it. But if you are, and you truly don't want to end up in another bad relationship or toxic relationship, the number one thing that I wish I had learned to do was trust my intuition. And it's hard to do, but if something feels wrong, if something feels off, it's because it is. And we have to learn to just trust that instead of like having to have evidence, But yeah, I would say number one is trusting your instincts. If somebody feels off, they probably are, right?
Gut feeling is like a real thing. I mean, they say your stomach is like your second brain, or it's directly connected to your brain. So I mean, it's kind of it's something you should definitely listen to.
But when you're not healing, you question yourself.
Sure.
When you're not in a place of awareness, you're going, is it me? Am I just seeing things? Am I just, no, it's not you. It's not you. But either way, when you are in a relationship with a healthy person, those kinds of things those alarm bells shouldn't be going off. Like no alarm bell should be going off. It should be like, this is enjoyable getting to know this person, and I'm still figuring them out. But it feels good. Like it feels peaceful, it feels safe. It should feel safe. So I would say that's the number one thing. Also, just inconsistency with the person. I don't mean like they're calling you every single day, giving you a good morning, good night text every single day. That's not what I mean by consistency. I mean their personality. Like they're the same person every time you see them. They're the same person every time you speak to them for the most part. And I mean, we all have struggles. We all have things come up, but they can communicate. Like if they're having an off day, like I'm having an off day, that's consistency, right? But when someone's like really, really nice one day and the next day they're kind of weird and off, like standoffish, or then another day they kind of snap at you for no reason, that's inconsistent behavior in a person's personality. That's a huge red flag that women miss a lot because we're overly empathetic. And I think guys do too. But, and then the patterns of their relationships. Is everyone in their life out to get them? That's a red flag. Do they have a lot of, broken relationships in their life? That's a red flag. Do they have a lot of exes that they think are crazy? That's a red flag. Like normal, healthy people aren't calling all of their ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends crazy. Right. They're going, yeah, I mean, things didn't work out because of this and that person just wasn't in the same place. They're reasonable, right? But yeah, I would say those are like the three number one things, like trusting your instincts, looking for inconsistent behaviors in their personality, and the way that they talk about the people in their lives and the relationships that they have in their lives. I think that will tell you a lot about someone and whether you want to be in a relationship with them, Yeah.
And obviously your daughter's not quite old enough to date yet, but
Thank God.
what are some of those conversations, or are you already having these conversations with her to prepare her for the dating world and things to look out for? Are you already having those conversations with her, or
not yet? Because she still thinks guys are gross.
Okay,
thank God.
Perfect. Good. Yeah, we got kudos. Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, she's not wrong. Guys are gross.
Still think boys are weird.
Yeah.
But no, gosh, I wish I could go back to my younger self in so many ways. But one of my biggest issues that I've always had with myself, and that I'm going to be very like clear for her, is like, words don't mean anything if they're not backed up by action. Like if words and actions aren't aligning, throw the whole thing out, because that is integrity, right? Like, and integrity matters. But that, and just like not trusting a person just because they're nice. Like there's a huge difference between a nice and a kind person. And I didn't know that when I was younger. If somebody was nice to me, I just thought they were a good person, but that's not true.
We just had that conversation with a member up here last week on Friday. I think we were having that conversation.
Yeah. Nice means nothing. Right. Anyone can be nice on the surface, right? But kindness, you just feel it, you know it. But you can't trust that until time has proven that it's true. You know, I if I could go back, my gosh, I would have not dated so many people that I did when I was young just because of that reason alone, you know?